Susan Garrett. We just did an entire interview before the interview. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to grab these gems. Thank you so much for spending the time. You have impacted my life in ways that you cannot even imagine. And I'm so, so grateful for you taking the time out of your busy schedule to hang with us.
Oh, my pleasure entirely, Shelley, my pleasure.
So, I've told this story a number of times, but before I get to the story that has impacted my life so deeply, I just want to touch on who you are, what you do, and how you got there very briefly. Can you share
Mm.
with us sort of
Uh,
your
I am a
prowess?
I'm a dog trainer who's probably best known throughout the world as being somebody who bases my training in reinforcement in games. I've won, I don't, 35 or more, I don't count,
38.
world, 38, thank you, world or national, US national, Canadian national championships in the sport of dog agility, but I competed and had success in other dog sports. But really, right now, and I still compete in those sports. I run a series of classrooms, online classrooms, where I help people realize that they can achieve everything they want and have the dog of their dreams if they focus on training a dog with kindness. And the side benefit of it is that you are transformed as much as your dog is transformed because we help bring an awareness to how the behaviors you rehearse every day with your dog become who you show up for in this world to other people in your life. So if you've been taught to be dominant and be a leader and look for judgment and blame, then that is can't help but leak into your relationship with your children or your spouse or your coworkers, or if you're leading a team, it becomes that. And for me, it was always about I wanted congruency in my life, that I show up as the same person. And I haven't always been that way. Like as many of us, it's been experience that seeing that I'm super kind to dogs, but I wasn't always kind to people unintentionally. Like I wasn't just not being present, that I was hurting somebody's feeling. And so that's what led me to have this drive and focus for congruency. And so we have a very, very successful dog training program, but and that's what people come for. But what they come away with is like you said, life coaching, like that they become a better person because they chose to train their dog with us.
So powerful. I know you talk a lot about behavior modification and the concept of it's your choice.
Right.
And and so it's funny because I've had dogs growing up throughout my life. I haven't had dogs for a number of years just because I'm a shift worker and I'm away for long
Right.
periods of time. But I learned more from being with my dog and just watching them grow and myself kind of have to interact with them and really just watching what works and what doesn't. But when I now hear you talk about dog training and things like it's your choice and making your dog feel both safe and then confident,
Mm.
all of that translates to skills that I, as a firefighter and an entrepreneur and a podcaster and somebody who really wants to create not only a change but a movement in the world for inclusivity and possibility and all those things, I listen to you say those things and they're so transferable. Can you talk about it's your choice and what that means?
So our program is based on the dog making free. They have the right to choose what they want. Now that sounds like positive parenting gone bad, where but the difference is that um, we have the focus that positive is not permissive. So I still have outcomes that I want to achieve, and the way that we do it, our mantra is, and I got this from Wayne Dyer way back in the, I don't know, 70s or 80s, where I heard him say that everybody's doing the best they can. And so I believe that all dogs are doing the best they can with the education we've given them in the environment that we've put them in. And so we need to be able to manipulate the environment so the correct choice is the easy choice and the wrong choice is the hard choice. But unfortunately that's not what people do, either with dogs or with kids, teenagers, with people that they're supposed to be supervising at work. And so you end up having to judge their behavior as wrong. And that creates a dog or a person who doesn't feel psychologically safe. And when you move from your forebrain to your lizard brain, then
Hmm.
you do things that are defensive. And so, as somebody who leads a team, I want to empower everybody on my team to feel that and embrace the fact that you can choose to try something, and if it doesn't work, we're going to get a lesson from that. And that doesn't mean I encourage my team to be careless, but I want to have a team that isn't work going about their job every day looking to please me or to be afraid of what would happen if they chose something I wouldn't want them to choose. And so that empowers them to be creative in their role and to come to me and say, I'm going to try this. What do you think? Well, let's have a go with it. And so you create psychological safety for the dog, for whoever it is. Like I said, there's this congruency that it's how I live my life, and it's empowering for everybody around you. But you are more intentional about the outcomes that you're getting because you realize they all start from you. I'm
Mm.
not, it's about creating an environment of success for you, my dog, or you, somebody who's on my team, or whoever it is that I'm coaching with their dog. If they fail in our program, it's because I failed as their coach, rather than saying, well, there's a duffer. They're just, they'll never be able to train a dog. No, if they failed, let's tweak our code. Let's tweak the information we're giving them or how we're delivering it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like play the ball where it lies, right? Like not every swing is the same and not every situation is the same. And really, I mean, life is fluid and it's a situation of adapt and overcome. You
Exactly.
talked though, you told a story about how dog training and the idea of it's your choice. You told a story about you learned a lot of it from your mother and watching TV. Can you tell that? Can you tell that story and make that powerful?
So I'm one of 9 children, and so my mom would call us down for tea for dinner, and of course, on Sunday nights, Disney was always at 6 o'clock, which was crazy. Like, why would Disney do that? And so we wouldn't, if we chose not to go, it was always our choice. Like, I honestly, I never heard my father raise his voice once in my entire life. And so my mom or dad would call us down for supper, and if we chose not to, they would give us, I don't know, 5 minutes. And if we chose not to come, they would just go into the basement. And back then, there was like the old fuses. They'd unscrew the fuse, and then it would be gone, and it wouldn't come back till the next day.
So that
So
would knock
you,
the TV out.
right. So you had the choice to sit and try and watch TV, but you knew after dinner there would be no TV because
Mm.
the fuse was gone. And so it was always if you were trying to, um, it would be havoc to try and force 9 children to do what you wanted them to do. And so we all, I mean, I was never given a, a certain time when I had to be home, a curfew. I was never grounded or punished, but yet my 2 sisters were both given curfews. And so everybody was parented differently based on, I was the sports fiend. I was always playing some sport somewhere where my sisters were at the mall. So, as a parent, you go, they could get into more trouble at the mall hanging out with kids than, carrying a bag of hockey equipment around and, going from rink to rink to rink as I did. And so, yeah, that's really the foundation of how I approached my, back in the 80s when I started training dogs for other people in the 70s, but I got my first dog in the 80s of my own. And that was what the foundation was.
So powerful and transferable. I am in awe of your ridiculous successful track record. But I always like to trace the root back, and I think to myself, for anybody who's accomplished the something, right, the amazing thing, whether you're one of the most celebrated dog agility athletes, or you've raised $1 million, or whatever that looks like. It's easy to look at somebody's story like that and say, wow, you're extraordinary and remarkable, and you are. But for the person listening, it's also, wow, that's great for Susan, like that's so inspirational. But when you trace the root back of before you had that success and before you had that track record, you didn't. And before
Right,
you were extraordinary, at one point you were ordinary. And so
right.
can you talk about what that was like the first time maybe you were nervous and you hadn't ever won an anything? And can you talk about what that looked like, or what you might have thought about or visualized, or how you got through the nerves to, because here's the thing, like I think there is an unconscious dialogue oftentimes that is playing in people's mind about where you are worthy of landing, or where you are worthy words, where you are worthy of being. And sometimes, like, from the starting point, you might have looked at a world champion and thought, like, man, like, is that for me? Could I possibly do that? For all of us, what advice would you give us in terms of looking at the summit from the foot of the mountain?
Wow, that's a great question. And for me, I don't know that the goal was the summit. I think for me, the goal has always been um, bringing out the absolute best in the dog. And is there, like, who do I have to become to give
Mm.
you what you need? And every dog is going to be different. So I have to be present to how I have to change who I am in order for them to excel and to be patient. So I've had dogs who people, like I had one dog called Decaf, and behind my back, I heard people calling her Deke the Freak, and that she would never accomplish anything because she was a little bit nervous and afraid and would go slow and tentative. And the dogs really start to come into their own when they're 2 or 3, and as a 3-year-old they start to really win if they're going to win. Well, Decaf won her first world championship when she was 5, and she won many. She won, I think, more gold or more medals at a world championship event than any dog I've ever owned.
Oh, wow.
Um, but when I won the first one, and one of the people who was calling her Deke the Freak, she sent me an email, and she said, "Listen, I always knew you'd figure it out with her, that you would be able to have some level of success, but in no way did any of us think you would get there." And I wrote her back one line, and I said, "When I look at my dogs, all I see is greatness. It's just up to
Mm.
me to bring it out." And so if you look for what's good and just keep fanning that flame, they're going to be different, and they're going to be good for different reasons. Decaf was brilliant, not because she was the fastest, but because she could turn the tightest. And so fan the flame of what is good in that dog or that person, and help them realize that's their superpower. And we all don't have to have the same superpower. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't work if we did.
Mhm.
But fan that flame. And so for me, that was always been my focus. And then when I felt the nerves, when I would be in a position where I really wanted to lay down a great run, I always connected through breath with my dogs. I love to meditate in the morning. So I would connect before I would leave them. I take a deep breath, and you could see the dog relax, and I would relax. And I would always remind myself, the outcome of this run, there's still going to be no world peace, and my mother is still going to love me. And
Mm.
so that it wasn't going to change anything really, right? So the best way for me to be at my best is to be the most relaxed I could be, and not, the more you focus on an outcome, which is out of your control. It doesn't matter what outcome you want, it's out of your control. You need to focus on the things that will bring you as close as possible to that outcome. And for me, it's breath. When I'm about to sprint as fast as I can and compete against kids that are in their 20s, and I'm now 60 years old, and that's the thing that's going to allow me to be physically at my best.
Hmm. Well, there is something about resistance too, and the idea of what you resist persists, right? And if you can
Hmm.
just like unclench and relax a little, then it has a chance to actually find its way to you.
Right.
I want to get to the story that you told me that has so deeply impacted me. I've shared this a number of times, and I just am grateful that you agreed to come on so I can share it with all of the people. I had the opportunity to spend a number of days with you a couple years back, and you're Susan Garrett, the dog agility guru, and all of that. But you're also one of the wisest people I've ever met. And you were talking about what I have come to term the metrics of like high level success,
Hmm.
and you were talking about visualization. Now, I had the opportunity as we were hanging out for a number of days to really get to know you better, but also to watch the habits that you have. I watched you get up every morning at, I don't know, it must have been 5 a.m. and you
4 to 5.
You work quarter to five, a number that
No,
starts
between 4 and 5. Whenever I wake up, that's when it starts.
a number that starts with four potentially, but
Yeah.
you would do a meditation, you would have a workout, um, and I remember you invited all of us to join you, and I thought, maybe not
No,
today, maybe
no good.
tomorrow,
No good
maybe
keeping that
maybe
up.
not.
No.
But it's so funny, like it's grain of sand, grain of sand, grain of sand, and all of that informs who you be, who you're about to become, and all of the things. But the story that you told that so deeply impacted me as I saw the fabric of your character and your commitment and your habits was the visualization exercise that you would go through before you ran a race.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if you can talk about that and also how that relates to somebody who maybe isn't specifically in dog training, or maybe they'd like to be, and
Hmm.
how that impacts your success and your ability to rise to the top of your game.
Certainly, visualization for me started with sports, and anyone who's played sports, you're taught to, to walk through what you're going to do in real time, as if you're watching a movie. Would be one way to look at it. And for somebody like me, I maybe watch it go through as if I'm watching in a movie. Then I watch it as if I'm a commentator watching myself that is doing the act. And then, as I mentioned to you, for me, the third part is to go through that event as if I'm my dog and seeing what my dog is seeing. And am I in the right spot to give them the best opportunity to be at their best? And so I think, potentially because I grew up being dyslexic and having a very difficult time reading, I got really, really good at mimicking and faking and not letting people know that there was something not quite right. And so, being able to see things as a movie in my mind, was what allowed me to do that. And I think it's one of my superpowers now. So if I'm going to be at a world championship or, lecturing somewhere at a marketing event, which I often get asked to do, I ask for a picture. A video would even be better, but a picture of where I'm going to be. There doesn't have to be any people in this picture. But if I can see a picture or a movie, then I will do in my morning visualization. I will visualize what I'll be doing there.
Mhm.
And so like this morning's visualizations, I have an 18-month-old puppy who's never really done agility yet. So she's never run a course. She's maybe put two or three obstacles together, but I've done jump training, I've done some skill training. And so what I do every morning now is I visualize one of my old world championship runs that I've run in the past, and I visualize running her at that event. And so, I'll do hundreds of these before she'll ever get to an event, so that when we do run at an event, we have a natural partnership out there. And if I'm going to lecture, I mean, I don't really get nervous when I lecture in front of large groups. And maybe that's part of the reason, because I've visualized, um, and I know the person I need to be when I step on stage. Who do I want them to see? What message do I want the people in the seats to take home, having seen or listened to Susan Garrett talk on whatever topic that is? And so, it's just about being intentional and being actually present in a future moment, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it's not just it's taking in as many scents as you can. So when I'm visualizing, like this morning, I'm playing with my dog, I'm playing tug, and I hear the announcer saying, representing Canada, Susan Garrett, and this. And then I feel the back of my neck, the hair gets a little bit up, and then I walk out here, I can hear. So I take in as many senses as I can to make that as real as possible, because your brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. So if you can visualize this movie, your brain thinks they've already done it. And who isn't better at anything the second time you do it?
Mm.
And so I'm just tricking my brain that this is like the 100th time we've done this. Oh yeah, I know we've done this 100 times. And so, that is something that I do for whatever it is that is going to happen. And I can control the things that I can do. I can't control what somebody's going to say to me. If there's going to be a heckler, there's never been a heckler, but I can control and sometimes my brain will want to visualize something dark.
Mm.
So it will want to visualize somebody sitting in the front row with their arms crossed, going, she's full of crap. And the human nature is to ignore that person in your visualization. And I have a very good friend who's won 7 Olympic medals. His name is Greg Louganis. He's represented the United States in diving. And when we were talking about visualization, Greg said, don't be afraid to open that door. Because if you don't open that door, your brain will always bring you back there. So if in my visualization, my dog knocks a bar, I let it go. I finish the run and I go, guess what? There's still no world peace. And, I still am a happy person who has a great life. And so then when you visualize it again, the bar doesn't fall. So visualize that person and then realize what's within your control. Is it within your control to make that person be happy? Like, how do you know that person didn't just get some really devastating news from home? So it's not within your control of how that person is acting or feeling. Just send them love and do what's within your control, and be the best person for the other, couple thousand people that might be there listening.
Totally. Well, I love that you said that, because I'm a publicly pretty woo person. And I remember when I was a 108-pound manicurist and I was working at my mom's nail shop and I was absolutely hating it. And I made this bold statement that I wanted to become a firefighter, which was absolutely asinine at the time, because I was tiny and I had no skills or knowledge or experience or any of the things. And at that time, there were essentially no women.
Right.
So saying that out loud was countered with all kinds of doubters and haters, and they were loving me within the limits of their own fear. So fair, but it's also really tough to see yourself as something bigger and something better when you've never experienced that for self, and also everybody else is telling that you couldn't. But I remember I had a friend named Steve, and he was the person who I was just like my mentor, and I just had such insane regard for him and his integrity and his knowledge. He was a firefighter, and he was the person who said, well, why don't you just apply? And I was able to borrow his confidence until I had my own. But what I started doing, unbeknownst to myself at the time, that in hindsight, looking back, I think was the game changer, was every single night before I went to bed, I would practice not just visualizing, being on the truck or visualizing. I would practice feeling what it felt like to get that phone call. And it's like, and then I would walk through, okay, like, what does it feel like a month after I've been on the job, right? Because it's just sort of normalizing and demystifying that. So the initial phone call was like so exciting, because all of your work and all of your teeth getting kicked in and all of that has been realized, and it's this pinnacle moment where you're like, holy crap, like I did it. I like overcame the odds. But then a month later, just to normalize that sort of in my body, it's not as exciting. It's not, I mean, it's thrilling because you've done the thing, but it's now the wearing the cloak of being a person who you previously weren't is just normal. That's just who you be now.
Exactly.
And I think in hindsight, looking back, if you want to talk about vibrational alignment or law of attraction or all of those things, what I realized is that I was actually, yes, preparing for it, like my life was on fire, no pun intended, but it was also the thing that was drawing it to me. So instead of like pushing and efforting, it was actually drawing it to me.
And to just talk on the, vibrational energy, there was an event I was at. It was over in Europe. I was competing, and it just so happened that maybe some of the biggest Susan Garrett haters were on my team that year. And so at first, months in advance who's on the team, and and I would be like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And so the first thing I did was maybe not the highest vibrational thing that I could have done, but I visualized all of them wearing my logoing on their chests. So I immediately sponsored the team, so they all had to wear my brand on their chests. So that was the first thing. But they were very clever. Some of them, when they had team pictures, they covered up the logo with their dog or whatever. But anyway, so that was not higher vibrational Susan Garrett. As I got closer, and in my visualizations, you would be in the team, room, and you'd walk by these people, and in every visualization, because my visualization starts from, what breakfast I'm having that day. And I know all of that in advance. And so I'd bump into these people, and I'd walk into a room and they'd all stop talking. And so those were parts of my visualizations. So they were all outside of my control, but they have the ability to get in my head so I can't do my best when I need to be my best. So I made a decision in my visualization. Every time I see one of these people, I'm going to think of one nice thing I could say about them. If, well, in my visualization, it was, if I had to ask to speak at their funeral, which I wasn't wishing them dead, but that was the best thing I could do.
Right.
So if what is one, and it had to be a different nice thing every time. And I wasn't going to say it to them. They didn't want to hear anything from me, but it was just a thought I would have in the game, because everything's a game to me. I had to make a game out of every day. I'd say something different about you. And sometimes near the end of the weekend, I was grasping straws, right? Like, I really like how you style your kids' hair or whatever it was. And so the first day at the event, it was exactly as icy as I thought I had visualized it would be. But it didn't stop me. Every time I saw one of these people, those were my thoughts. The second day at the event, they were making eye contact as we would pass, and I would smile because I was thinking good thoughts about them. I'm sure the energy coming out of me was something happy. By the third day of the event, they were talking to me, and at the end of the event, you wouldn't have guessed that we weren't like great teammates that we've been all along. Now, I'm not inviting any of them over for supper, and neither are they ever going to invite me over to their supper. But the point is, raise your vibration. And when you're coming from a place of gratitude and love and appreciation, that it changes who you send out, the energy you send out to the world. And you are once again controlling the reality that you're going to receive, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. You were talking about visualizing both externally and internally. Are you willing to share that piece?
Um, Well, that came about. I was teaching in Australia, and I was staying it was right on the edge of the rainforest, and I'd been suffering from plantar fasciitis for a long time. And but there was a 200-kilometer trail that went through the rainforest that I would get, because I do get up early in the morning, and I wouldn't be scheduled to do my first lecture until 9. I could go out walking from 5 on, but my foot was, anybody who has had plantar fasciitis, my foot was in so much pain. I couldn't walk very far, and I'd hobble back. Then I'd have to stand up, be on my feet all day. Well, I think it was the second or third day. I'm like, let's try visualizing what it would be like to go inside our body and see what's down there at the bottom of our foot. So I laid in the bed and I visualized going through my belly button. Now, for me, my best visualizing happens if I can see what it looks like. And so I needed to see online and get a picture of what does the bottom of a foot look like. Like, what does the fascia look like, and where is it the muscles attach? And I didn't have to do surgery. I just needed to get an idea. And so I did that laying in bed for an hour one night. I never had plantar fasciitis again.
It's incredible.
And then because of that success, I did it again when I hurt my back one time. That I'd gone to the chiropractor and massage. It had been going on for like 3 weeks. I could barely walk, and I was coming up to the U.S. National Championship. And it was the same year one of my dogs had passed away, and it was 6 weeks after my father was killed in a car accident. And I didn't realize that was just the energy that was locking up my body. And I saw a good friend who was a more energetic chiropractor, and she said, when I got there, I still couldn't walk. I'm in Arizona. I'm about to compete. I still can't walk. She said, you need a release, and I can't help you. You need to cry or scream. So I explained, I've cried a lot. And she said, no, you need to. And I'm like, I'm not much of a crier. She said, well, you need to figure it out. So I went back into the motorhome, and when I went inside my body, I saw my coccyx kind of curled like a dog with their tail between their legs. And I uncurled that, walked out of the motorhome, won that national championship.
Oh my gosh, Susan.
It's very woo, and I apologize if this is just way too out there for some of you people.
No. People like us do things like this, as Seth Godin would say, and it's it is superpower. And I will share with you, for about 10 years, I had chronic back pain, and ironically, it was odd because I couldn't, like, it didn't affect my ability to lift or to move or anything like that. But it was almost like this compression, and there was no position of comfort. I would move from one area to the next, and I would roll around in bed, and I would get a fresh position, and I'd feel okay for 20 minutes, and then it would hurt. And just basically, I was running away from the pain the entire time.
Mm.
And what I found was it started when my father was diagnosed, and
Mm.
it stayed with me long after he passed. And
Mm.
once I was able to your point, have that energetic release, it's been gone the entire time. It was
Mhm.
shocking. So
Grief is energy for sure, right?
yeah, absolutely. I am so grateful that you were able to stop by and share all of the awesomeness that I have been privileged to enjoy for so long. But I just want to recap some of the things that you've talked about, which are you oftentimes need to become the person who's going to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. You talked about playing the ball where it lies and being in flow, and how not everything is static and not everything requires the same approach. You talked about things being your choice, and that comes right down to even things like, what would you like to get up? How would you like to nourish your body? What kind of visualizations would you like to do? You talked about seeing your greatness and seeing your dog's greatness, but also just seeing the greatness in things and bringing that about. You talked about playing to your strengths and connecting with breath to feel calm and to actually achieve the thing you want to. You have to see it and feel it and believe it. Susan Garrett, I am ultimately grateful for you. Thank you so much for
Oh,
stopping
you're
by and
welcome.
hanging out with us.
Well, thank you for the chat. It's been nice. And best of luck to everybody who's listening to this. My wish is for everyone to look for that congruency in in your life, so that you can be energetically aligned in everything you do. And for me, that's a recipe for happiness in every day of your life. Just to look for that alignment.
If people are looking for you online, where is the best place they can find you?
Well, I'm on all the social platforms, but our website is Dogs That, DOGSTHAT. And it's funny enough that the business that I started back in 1996 is called Say Yes, which is kind of funny. But I decided I didn't want to tell people it was their choice. I'm not going to tell you to say yes to your dog. And so Dogs That is the new branding name of our business, because it's, who do you want your dog to be? Do you want a dog that is quiet, or do you want a dog that's rambunctious? That's your choice, and I'm going to help you create that dog.
You're amazing, and I love you.
Thank you. Right back at you, sister.